Alright guys, I just thought I'd take a minute here to show you a video on what I've been working on and a few ways to mod the aluminum robot V. As you can see here, I've done a few. This is my first aluminum one here. This is my resin, and this is my second aluminum. I have not done much to this one except give it a paint job and some new eyes, so I'll compare most of what I'm doing to him. As you can see, I have another pile of V all over the floor. Pretty much what I'm working on here is giving this guy some articulation. And what I've done on these is I have been using these Gorilla ball joints here as waist articulation. I have taken this first part of the Gorilla ball joint and JB welded this into the bottom of this aluminum robot V. It's a little messy, but once I paint it, you'll never see it. The second half, I have taken and cut off the piece that originally holds them together here, and I've drilled this out with a 1/2-inch drill bit and went ahead and sunk a bottom portion of this into that. I cut this ball off on the bottom here so that I wouldn't have to drill it quite as far, but as you can see, it just sinks down inside to give you a nice socket, which these two pieces will connect into to give him his articulation. Gives him quite a good bit of articulation, as I've done on this one here. Has quite a nice range of movement. Works out really well. Don't use the JB quick weld because that stuff doesn't work anywhere near as good as the JB original. So that is how I get my ball joint waist articulation. Now down to the arms. If you look on the original Robot V's arm, get out of there, he has this little nub that comes out and connects into his shoulder joint. Well, what I've done is I've cut that little nub off and inserted a ball joint. You also drill that out with a 1/2-inch drill bit. And what I've done is I've taken one of these ball joints here from these white clips, and I cut it in half so I wouldn't have to drill it out quite as far. So I cut it right about down there, down the middle. Sink that in nice and flush, and then JB weld all around that so it stays in place. Then I take the other end and I take this clip here and cut it pretty much right along this line here, up and right back over. You'll see there's a little line on it. Makes for a pretty good area to cut. And then I sink that into the shoulder, if I can get it focused. Sink that into the shoulder and JB weld those on both sides there, so it gives you a nice shoulder ball joint. And once that's dry, you have a really nice ball joint to work with there. And then once I'm done painting this, you won't be able to tell that I've filled that with JB weld. So that gives you a really nice shoulder joint here that it can move around quite freely. After that, I'm doing some work on his wrist mod here. I went ahead and I cut the original wrist. I cut this piece off here with a Dremel and a metal blade, and I'm working on cutting these down the middle so that I can have two halves. I'll eventually re-glue the one half back onto the arm, as I did right here, to give you an idea of how I made for the wrist movement. Put a little washer in there too to give it a little bit so it's not metal on metal. So that was a lot of work too. I also had to cut down this end piece here because it's way too long, and you kind of have to cut a piece off of there so it'll fit in right about there to allow it to move up and down freely, which works out pretty well. Next, down to the head. This is my original aluminum, and what I've done is I have chopped Johnny's head off, smoothed this out so that I can glue a Lego ball joint on underneath there. I'll glue it right to the bottom of the head, and then I removed that center neck piece, the black piece, I removed all together, and I chopped off the tops of these here. I'll drill a small hole out here to add in the other half the Lego ball joint, and then I'll JB weld that in place, which will give him nice head articulation. Then what I do is I drill out a very small hole in the tops of these cylinders, and I will drill a very small hole right about there and right about there, which will let his neck pivot once I put a small piece of wire in there, and that gives him his neck movement. Hard to get a good picture there. That's probably one of the toughest steps. One of the other things I've done here is I've also taken the Dremel and notched this section out in the tread, which allows him to do his tiptoe mode. That way it'll clear when it rotates. So that comes out pretty nice as well. You kind of have to make that nice and tight, or else when he's on his tiptoes he'll just fall right back down. Doing something a little different here with my resin Robot V. The neck struts are actually working little cylinders off of a RoboCop toy. They're a little tighter than the aluminum, so it doesn't give as much range of movement, but they look really nice, and they actually work pretty well too. So if you look at the back of the NECA brand RoboCop, these are right on the back of his leg. They connect to his foot and to his bottom of his leg, and I just cut those off and put those on the bottom of his neck, and it worked out quite well. So that's pretty much what I'm working on here. If I didn't touch on anything, feel free to ask me and I'll show you what to do. But eventually I'm going to repaint this guy once I get all of his ball joint work done, and he'll look just like these guys. So any questions, just let me know, guys.